Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in a minute. I hope everybody's having a good afternoon and evening. Hey, everybody. Aaron Kowalski here. We're going to let people log in and get started in a minute. Hey, everybody. Aaron Kowalski here. I'm going to start in probably about 60 seconds or so. Let everybody log in. It's very meta. I'm watching myself on Facebook, so I can keep an eye on questions. Hey, for folks just logging in, we'll get started in like 60 seconds. We're just about ready. All right. Well, why don't we get started here? I know it's a couple minutes after the hour. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Aaron Kowalski, CEO of Breakthrough T1D, and it's really exciting to be here to be able to talk about takeaways from this year's American Diabetes Association scientific sessions, which is kind of the biggest diabetes meeting in the world every year. It always happens in June. And all sorts of scientists, doctors, companies, Breakthrough T1D team members, and you name it, gather to talk about the latest and greatest across diabetes. So I'll give a little summary of that. You can follow along on Facebook Live if you're here already, or Instagram, LinkedIn. And I'm following Facebook Live questions. I know the team will be following other questions. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. So I'm going to start, let me see here. I'll pull up my next slide. This is the 84th scientific sessions American Diabetes Association puts on, again, to really educate on the latest advancements in diabetes research and policy and care and treatment. I'm really proud of the role Breakthrough T1D has played in the progress in type 1 diabetes research and development. At this conference, there were over 190 studies that we funded or partially funded, clinical trials, research that is driving this process along. I'll just say, from my perspective, one of the things that I'm always thinking about is our mission. At Breakthrough T1D, our mission is to accelerate life-changing breakthroughs to cure, prevent, and treat type 1 diabetes and its complications. And I take that very seriously, accelerating, trying to make this happen faster, life-changing, making sure that these breakthroughs reach our community. If you don't know me or if we haven't met before, my brother Steve and I have type 1 diabetes. Diagnosed a long time ago. This is 40 years ago for me, and Steve, I think, is about 47 years. And fortunately, we're doing well. And our lives have been changed for the better because of the funding and advocacy that Breakthrough T1D has done over the years and supported over the years. You probably know I'm saying Breakthrough T1D, formerly JDRF, and really that's a nod to this new brand that Our organization is focused at all ages and all stages of the disease. Steve and I were diagnosed as kids. We're adults now. And half of type 1 diabetes diagnoses are in adulthood. We're focused on helping anybody who's living with this disease. And our mission is accelerating life-changing breakthroughs, and hence the new name. So I'm really proud of that. I think it's great. It's been really fun to talk about as it's rolled out. So ADA size sessions, again, I was in Orlando, as were a number of our team members. When I think, again, there's the team, and I'm really proud of this team. When people support Breakthrough T1D, they're supporting not only research, but also our fund and our policy work that we do. Because ultimately, to accelerate life-changing breakthroughs, you have to make the discoveries, and often that's in academia. I came from an academic research background, but then you need these advancements to be commercialized, and you need them to make their way through regulatory processes, and you need them to be reimbursed. And ultimately, for our lives to be changed for the better, we need them to be accessible. And we had members of our research team, amazing team in Orlando, our T1D fund team, amazing team in Orlando, and our policy and global team, amazing team in Orlando, really representing that entire research and development pipeline. So that's a lot of background, but I think it's really important to frame where we fit in this broad ecosystem of T1D advancements. And one question I get a lot at Breakthrough T1D, formerly JDRF, is what is the relationship between Breakthrough T1D, formerly JDRF, and the American Diabetes Association? And I can tell everybody that it's great. We really, really work hard to synchronize what we do, not duplicate efforts, support one another's organizations. And we our strengths often lie in different places. There's some overlap, but when there is overlap, we're trying to make sure that our funding and support is complementary to one another. This is a great picture with Chuck Henderson, the CEO of ADA, Sydney Jovic, who was my chief strategy and chief of staff at Breakthrough T1D, is now going to take on the CEO role of JDRF Australia, which I'm super excited about, and me. And we were together at a reception honoring actually Sydney as she's moving down to Australia. But Chuck and I keep in very close contact, as do our teams. Bob Gabay, the chief scientific and medical officer at ADA, is a very longtime friend. And I just want to really reassure everybody, because sometimes I hear scuttlebutt that people worry that we don't work together enough. We do. And it's great. And it's a great partnership, because it takes a village to accelerate life-changing breakthroughs. It takes academics, not-for-profits, companies, clinicians. And I'm really proud of the strength of the relationship of our two organizations. So let's get to the meat of this presentation and the science. This is just a sprinkling of the science. This is a huge conference, but these are super exciting for me. Advances that I left Orlando on cloud nine, coming back to my home in New Jersey. So cures. This is what Breakthrough T1D is all about. This is why we were founded. My goal is to take off my pump as the CEO of this organization and walk away from this disease. I firmly believe it's going to happen, and you'll see data to support that we are moving rapidly and very promisingly towards this goal. An area that I personally think has the most promise is what we call cell replacement. And we've known that you can replace the cells, the insulin-producing cells, beta cells, into people with type 1 diabetes and cure them for over 2 decades now. So you'd say, well, what are we doing here? This is like 2 decades. How is this possible? It was through a procedure called islet transplantation. And the challenge with islet transplantation is you have a limited amount of cells to do this with. This comes about, islet transplants, through what we call donor-derived islets. These are people who unfortunately pass away and donate their organs to help other people. And in this process, researchers identified that you could take the cells out of the pancreas that make insulin and the other important hormones like glucagon and other hormones in the islets of the pancreas and transplant them into people and cure them. Again, there are kind of two big challenges here. One is it's not enough cells, and two, the need for chronic immunosuppression. So for many years, we at Breakthrough T1D and others have been working on, could you create a renewable cell source, and how can we remove the need for immunosuppression? And I've seen already some questions here around this topic because everybody's really excited about it. So huge progress on this front, and I'll show you some amazing data that I just my jaw was on the floor. So we work with a company called Vertex. Vertex is a very large biotech company in South Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts. Long track record of really making a huge impact, particularly in cystic fibrosis. Now you've probably seen Vertex is trying to cure sickle cell disease and has an FDA-approved product. They're also investing heavily in curing type 1 diabetes. And this is an amazing story that goes back to Dr. Doug Melton at Harvard, a researcher who we funded for over 20 years now, who has 2 children with type 1 diabetes, trying to figure out how to make stem cells into insulin-producing cells. And then forming a company called Semma that our T1D fund invested in, and then ultimately Vertex acquiring Semma and moving this therapy into clinical trials. First trial is called VX-880, and it is using a stem cell-derived islet therapy with immunosuppression. So that's going to be their intended first product in humans now. And what they reported out is data from 12 of these people who have type 1 diabetes, no insulin production. The inclusion criteria for this trial is these people have had problems with severe hypoglycemia, unfortunately, and an elevated A1C. And the data, you can see a summary here. 12 people now have received the full dose of these cells. 11 have reduced or eliminated need for external insulin. And now 3 of these people are 12 months in, and all 3 are taking 0 insulin and have normal blood sugars. So I'm going to show you a slide that kind of highlights just what's going on here. That's absolutely amazing. So it's a little blurry, but this is taken from the presentation that they did. You can see the starting A1Cs. That's the left part of this slide. They're all above 7 to begin with, and everybody's trending down. So depending on how long you're in the trial, you see it's sloping down. The cells take a few months to get going. What these data are showing is over time, it's appearing to completely remove the need for external insulin. And you can see that in the other side of the panel where you look at the people's total daily doses and they're just going down, and you see a number of these folks are taking 0 units of insulin a day. Normalized A1C, 0 units of insulin a day. And I'll show you another slide for all the people on this call who live with type 1 or have a loved one with type 1 and do CGM, which is probably many of you. Time and range data. This is the time and range, and at the baseline, you see, I can't tell what that says. I think it's about 39% high, 49% in range, a lot of very high hypoglycemia. And you see over time, and it's blocked in my picture here, but guys, I mean, look at this, 95% time in range. It's really, it makes me shiver. So these data are amazing. Vertex is pushing forward on this potential therapy. I can tell you, Breakthrough T1D, we're going to do everything we can to see Vertex be successful. And the good news is it's not just Vertex. Novo Nordisk is working on this. A number of smaller companies are working on cellular therapies. And I'm not showing data. I saw in one of the questions What about VX264? Vertex is in a human trial with a non-immunosuppressed protocol with an encapsulated version of islets. We have no data from those trials yet, those people yet, but it shows you there's tremendous research and effort going on into this space right now. And these cells really, really appear to be working. It's just amazing. So I can tell you from my perspective as CEO of Breakthrough T1D, this is my number one priority, is to see these cells get out to the market. And the first product will be immunosuppression plus cells. And I know a lot of you will say, well, I don't want to take immunosuppression, but there are a lot of people who we believe this will benefit. Unfortunately, it's been many people have lost their kidneys due to diabetes. They're already on immunosuppressants. Could take their diabetes away. And then there are people with severe hypoglycemia problems. My belief is any adult who has type 1 diabetes should have access and make the decision if they want to make that trade-off. But I can tell you at Breakthrough T1D, our goal is immunosuppression-free cell therapies, and we are going to go full tilt to see that be realized. So I know a lot of you say, you've been hearing this for a long time. Folks, we have not seen data like this in people. This is a cell source that can be scaled. It doesn't require somebody dying. It's scalable. And we now have companies investing billions of dollars to try to bring this to the market. It's absolutely stunning and amazing. And I'm flabbergasted. It's just awesome. I'm so excited about this. So I'm sure there are questions. I'm trying to keep my eyes on the questions. And this is just another company, and we have a number, I think in our portfolio, probably upwards of 10 to 12 companies, at least working on immunosuppression-free stem cell-derived islet therapies for type 1 people. This is another company that we're partnering with, Alarda. The team was meeting with them using a hydrogel to try to protect the cells. Again, we're looking at physical barriers like macro encapsulation. We're looking at gene editing. We're looking at the combination of maybe shorter duration immunosuppression with these cells. So this is just another example of a company the Breakthrough T1D is supporting to try to have multiple shots on goal. And that's why you'll often hear me say cures, plurally, not cure or a cure. Because ultimately, the way this is all going to play out, we believe, is it's going to be a series of cures, like a stem cell-derived islet with immunosuppression that could potentially cure a group of people, but maybe not everybody. And then you start to move to the next gen and the next gen, just like there are multiple AID or closed loop systems on the market. We want to see multiple curative approaches on the market. And it's amazing times right now. So again, I'm going to scroll through these questions and try to hit them as we go, but or when I get through the slides. Another area of big focus for us and huge potential and huge movement in the field is in detecting type 1 diabetes earlier in the course of the disease and intervening to slow it and ultimately stop it. I'm going to just give a little background here. Most people don't, my experience is completely understand the genetics of type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is a genetic disease, meaning if you have it in your family, other people are at an elevated risk of getting it. So I have my brother and me. I have 4 siblings who don't have type 1 diabetes, fortunately. But they're at an elevated risk. My nephews and nieces and kids are at an elevated risk, almost 15 times the general population. So you would say, well, I'm the first person in my family. It's because it's complicated genetics. That's not what you learned in high school with Punnett squares and whatnot. The risk in the general population is about 0.4% or 4 in 1,000 people in the United States, at least, will get type 1 diabetes. In a person's family who has type 1, it's probably about 3 to 5% risk. And that's why often you won't see it in every generation. And fortunately, the bulk of our family members won't get it. But we do have an elevated risk. And at Breakthrough T1D, our goal is to stop type 1 from happening, to develop therapies that eliminate progression of the disease. And that's why early detection becomes so important. And we had a really, really important stake put in the ground this past weekend, where a multi-stakeholder group led by Breakthrough T1D published international consensus guidelines on staging and monitoring for type 1 diabetes, what we call pre-stage 3. So again, if you're not swimming in this science, what we now know, what the science tells us, is type 1 diabetes often, not always, but most of the time, develops many years before you, the person with type 1, show symptoms. So I was diagnosed when I was 13. But in our studies, TrialNet and TEDdy, big studies that have been done, what we understand now is the markers of type 1, the markers in your blood, what we call antibodies, show up on average when people are between 3 and 5 years old. So that means I was walking around with type 1 diabetes for upwards of 10 years and not knowing it. Well, imagine if we could get in there and save those insulin-producing cells that were trying to make insulin while my immune system was slowly decimating them. Well, we can do this now. We have the first ever approved drug that delays type 1 diabetes, Tzield. And that is amazing. The problem is the bulk of people don't know they're at risk. The bulk of people don't know they're walking around with antibodies. And what we need to do is get people, clinicians, people with diabetes, more aware of this phenomenon and the ability to now delay type 1. And by the way, the other huge additional benefit here is if you know you're walking around with what we would call stage 1 type 1 diabetes, so that's antibodies but normal blood sugar, it puts you at a dramatically reduced risk of getting DKA when you get diagnosed, which is really damaging to your body, as we know, and can be fatal. So this was huge. Again, it's another point to the ADA JDRF partnership, or I'm sorry, Breakthrough T1D partnership. I have to put a little thing in the dollar in the jar every time I say JDRF. But ADA, JDRF, Breakthrough T1D, and many other stakeholders came together. Anastasia, Dr. Anastasia Albanese O'Neill on our team led this program. And I will say we've been talking a lot to members of Congress about this. Senators Shaheen and Collins have put together what we call this, that they're calling the Screen Act, which would allow for the government, the US government, to invest more in screening. Hugely important. Major stake in the ground, published this weekend and presented at a major session this weekend at the ADA sessions. Another piece that was highlighted, and I've been really interested in this topic for many years now, is the use of CGM to identify when people are moving along in the course of their type 1 diabetes. So again, just to, if you don't live in this world, what happens is, for reasons that we still don't understand, your immune system, if you have type 1 diabetes, turns against our beta cells and starts a process by which the beta cells are destroyed. For some people, that happens quickly. My brother was diagnosed at 3. For others, it happens slowly. I was diagnosed at 13. We now have many adults diagnosed all the way up into the 60s and 70s. So there's this process. And the way we categorize it, again, is stage 1. We call stage 1 is having the markers in your blood, but normal blood sugar. But then over time, what we start to see is abnormal blood sugar. We call that stage 2. You don't need insulin yet, but you're not reacting to meals properly. Your fasting sugars are coming up. And then ultimately, stage 3 is when you go on insulin. This drug, teplizumab Tzield, is approved for people in stage 2 to delay stage 3. And on average, it delays it for about 3 years. There's now data that in stage 3, you can preserve beta cell function for this drug. It's not yet approved for that, but we hope FDA will do that soon. A tool, we all know about CGM, amazing tool for people who already have type 1. But what we're seeing now is you can use this tool to identify when people are starting to lose beta cell function and potentially get this drug to them sooner, preserve more beta cells for longer, and hopefully further delay the disease. So I think that's another major piece of this puzzle, because of course I know many people don't want to or have been hesitant to screen their kids for fear of finding out a diagnosis and not having anything to do about it. Well, we do have things to do about it now. There's Tzield. There's actually earlier intervention with insulin that can help, we believe, reduce beta cell stress. So this is another way we may be able to do that. I'm going to try to go back on my Facebook, make sure I'm keeping an eye on this. What about, before we get to cures and preventing type 1, keeping people healthy? And I'm always really proud of the work that we've done, and I was able to participate when I was working on the scientific team at Breakthrough T1D on helping people live healthier lives with this disease until we get to cures. Still a big priority of ours. One of the areas, of course, is trying to make glucose control better with less work. So AID, automated insulin delivery, all the systems on the market right now, I'm proud that we played a role in many of the algorithms that sit in these systems and the access to these systems. And we continue to see innovation. MiniMed 780G in people with high risk, meaning often highly elevated A1Cs, tremendously impactful. Reduction in A1C, more time in range, reduction of hypo. We've seen incredible feedback for people switching to the Tandem Mobi, which is a smaller kind of quasi patch pump. You can use it as a patch or a traditional pump. Amazing data presented on user kind of feedback about the quality of life improvement that they've seen with that pump. There's a new pump coming to the market called Twist, made by a company called Sequel. If you don't know the name DECA, this is a company led by Dean Kamen. That's where DECA comes from. And Dean Kamen actually built the first insulin pump ever when he was in high school in the 1970s. Now he's a famous engineer, an amazing guy, and he's created a whole new pump called Twist. And we love this because it's kind of using the plug and play approach that JDRF, formerly now Breakthrough T1D, and Helmsley worked on quite a bit with the FDA, and Tide Pool Loop, which is originated in the DIY community. And I was a looper for many years, which I loved. So AID systems continue to get better, smaller, more convenient, plug and play. Another one of our funded investigators over many years, Roman Avorka, his algorithm just got approved in the United States. CAM-AP works with a pump called Ipsomed, which they're trying to drive to the US market. So our whole thing with this at Breakthrough T1D is more options for people with type 1 diabetes are better. And it's great to see so much investment in making these systems smaller, easier to use. We're really focused on trying to remove the meal bolus and make them almost fully automated. So great movement on this front. So the area that we often don't like to talk about is diabetes complications, but unfortunately people still do get complications. The high blood sugar damages our bodies, and we need to do everything we can to minimize that. And again, unfortunately, people are getting complications still. And we are committed to doing everything we can to help those people. The good news is these therapies that actually started out as drugs in type 2 diabetes for metabolic control, meaning trying to bring people's A1Cs down, are now demonstrating amazing power to slow and reduce complications risk. So here's a study with what are called SGLT2 inhibitors, in this case dapagliflozin, that was used in adolescents with type 1 diabetes. We funded a trial that showed low doses of this drug can improve kidney function. There weren't significant adverse events, and we see this as an add-on to insulin that in type 2 diabetes, the results have been kidney function benefits, slowing kidney disease progression, reducing the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Amazing potential, we believe, to have similar effects in type 1 diabetes. So this is one of the studies we funded. We're funding other trials to help get labels from the FDA so type 1 people have easier access to these drugs. I know a lot of people have been trying to get them. Their insurance won't cover them. Sometimes their doctors won't prescribe them. We think there's tremendous upside with these drugs, whether it's SGLT inhibitors or GLP-1 drugs. So this is one of the studies that was presented at the ADA meeting. It showed, even in adolescents, where you can start to see, unfortunately, in some younger people, kidney disease, that we have drugs now that we believe can help. There's another study. One of the things that we've been fighting for a number of years, gosh, almost a decade now, is getting insurance companies, clinicians, decision makers like FDA to accept time in range as what we would call a validated outcome for type 1 people. And often what we would hear is, well, the only validated outcome is A1C. A1C is directly tied to complications, and therefore that's why we'll only accept that in clinical trials that we vet for, say, an FDA approval. The problem with that, as we all know, is A1C really only tells you about high blood sugar, not how you got there. So if you have an A1C of 7, some people may have a pretty flat, version of their life with a mean blood glucose of, say, 160, and not much variability off of that. Other people may have big spikes with lots of highs and lots of lows. Different type of A1C, different experience in life. So one of the things that the team has been really working on, again, with a bunch of stakeholders, is to help people convince the key decision makers that we need to move more to time in range. And now we have data to show that time in range is a marker of risk of diabetic complications, in this case, diabetic retinopathy. And if we can improve time in range, we can reduce the risk of people progressing to diabetic eye disease in this case. And we believe that will hold true in kidney and heart as well, and nerve. So really, a little bit in the weeds or a little bit wonky, but I think everybody here knows that A1C, we all look at our A1C, we get it every few months. But time in range, we can look at any day. And it's just a much more actionable and important tool in our opinion. All right, the last piece, and then I should have plenty of time for questions. I know people are asking them, so I'll scroll through here and make sure I try to get to as many as I can, is what we call behavioral health. And this would be the psychosocial side of diabetes. This is the mental health component of diabetes. Again, another area that people don't like to talk about, but everybody who lives with this disease, they and their families go through really tough patches. And some are even life-threatening type tough patches. And we need to do better. We need to recognize that type 1 diabetes is more than your blood sugar. It affects almost every facet of our lives. And it's a struggle, 24/7, 365. So how can we help? And this is an area that we're really working hard to help build into the clinical care for people living with this disease, making sure clinicians are asking about this, provide resources to families and people with diabetes who are struggling with this, whether it's depression, anxiety, eating disorders, you name it, the challenges that are way beyond A1C that we need more help with. I mean, anybody on this Zoom, how many of your doctors are asking you how you feel mentally? How many know where to go when you need help? I'm sure everybody's had struggles. And it's not just the person with diabetes. We all know this is a family burden that people carry, and it affects all family members. We've really worked really hard to increase the number of clinical and the psychologists and other professionals who have expertise in both psychological challenges and type 1 diabetes. I know not a lot of families I've spoken to, they'll go to clinicians that actually exacerbate the problems, who use the wrong language, who completely don't understand type 1 diabetes. So having somebody who can help with depression or eating disorders or anxiety, who get type 1 diabetes, has been a major, major focus of ours. We've funded and have now 24 young psychologists around the country who've done 2-year fellowships to train up in this area, in some of the best centers in the country and in the world. And we're going to continue to invest. We're funding studies. This is an area that we wish we didn't, we didn't have to be here, but we are. So I want to really reassure this community that we're focused on this. It's a priority, and we know that people need help. And sometimes it's, those tough patches are very, very dark. So Breakthrough T1D, I'm so proud to be at the helm here. My family's been doing this a long time. As I said at the beginning, my goal is to take off my pump. I can't tell you how many, of our team. Breakthrough T1D is about our team, and it's about our volunteers, and how committed the Breakthrough T1D team is to curing, preventing, treating, and complications, advancing life-changing breakthroughs on all fronts. We're working tirelessly on behalf of this community. Our mission isn't changing. The name change was really about being more inclusive. There is no juvenile diabetes anymore. It doesn't exist. People get diagnosed at every age. It's type 1 diabetes. And our mission is to accelerate life-changing breakthroughs for everyone with type 1 diabetes. Breakthrough T1D. So we are really, really proud of that. I would urge you all to get involved if you're not now. There's tons of opportunities to help out. Everybody on this Zoom should be a diabetes advocate. Everybody should be looking at participating in clinical trials. We have so many different ways you can get involved. So with that, I think that's my last slide. Yes. So use the chat. The team is going to send me questions. I'm going to scroll through some of these questions that I see here and try to get to them. If some of the first questions are about Vertex, not surprisingly. A lot of questions about the approaches. VX-880 uses immunosuppression, kind of what's next, partnerships with gene editing companies, encapsulation companies. The way we see this is we need many shots on goal. The interesting thing about the cell therapies right now is it's a diabetes problem that requires other people who are outside of diabetes to help us, whether it's material science people. So for example, we, for many years, have been funding the Langer lab, Bob Langer and Dan Anderson at MIT, to work on microencapsulation approaches. World-renowned material science and polymer science people, gene editing companies, incredible immunologists looking at next-gen immunotherapies. So maybe there's immunosuppression today. What if that's chronic? What if we could make that a 1-week immunosuppression or localized immunosuppression? So the first question is really around that. And then when are we going to hear more about data? So that's something that unfortunately we don't control. We wait, I think, as anxiously as you all do. Sometimes we get heads up, which is good. But as soon as we can talk about it, we will. I can tell you, every study tells us valuable information, and it helps us guide our next funding strategies. So where do we go next? What can we fund? What's going to be helpful? What are the right policies? How can we answer these questions as quickly as possible so we can drive these therapies to the market as fast as possible? Okay, let's see. Oh, can you, Ilana, thank you for your question about glucose responsive insulin, sometimes called smart insulin. So for listeners who don't know what this is, I'll give you a little bit of background. When I started my diabetes journey, and my brother, when we started, we used cow and pig insulin. Not great. 2 shots a day, 3 shots a day, fixed dose, really difficult. Then the DNA revolution began, and the insulin gene was cloned, and we started using human insulin. Better, more scalable for the companies, more easily manufactured, but subcutaneous insulin doesn't work like insulin from your pancreas. So human regular insulin back then, and then I used MPH, super slow acting, 2-hour peak action. You had to dose it early, really, really hard. Then you saw insulin analogs. So what are insulin analogs? The companies, they figured, well, we can change the structure of the protein, insulin is a protein, and make it work faster. Those were the rapid-acting insulin analogs, Humalog, Novolog, Apidra. So you've seen a movement on rapid-acting analogs. Now you have inhaled insulin, which is a little bit different because it's inhaled and gets into the bloodstream faster through your lungs. But the whole goal was, how do we make insulin more physiologic? And then there were the longer-acting insulins like originally Lantus. Now you have Tresiba, Toujeo, those types of insulins, engineered to be slower-acting. Kind of the holy grail is, well, what if we could make insulin work only when your glucose is high and release in response to glucose levels, glucose responsive insulin or smart insulin. So we have been funding work in this area for a decade now. It's a hard problem. You can imagine if you give a lot of insulin that's more than your body needs at any given moment, it has to be airtight. We can't have it be released when your body doesn't need it. It could be fatal. That said, we've seen amazing progress. We know that Novo and Lilly have active programs in this area and see this as the future kind of, again, holy grail of insulin. So there is still work going on. We are still funding work in this space, and it's hugely important. And then I see, Susan, you have a question about insulin access. Insulin access is a massive priority of ours. I was just on Capitol Hill with our diabetes advocates. Our government day was 3 weeks ago. I saw a few of our advocates on the live stream here. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your schedules and coming to meet with your members of Congress in Washington. And this was a major theme of our talking points. We need legislation to fix this problem. We need the companies to help us fix this problem. And hopefully you all know that we're working with Civica, a not-for-profit who will manufacture insulin and sell it essentially at cost. So it's a tremendous priority of ours. Nobody should go without their insulin. Nobody should ever, of course, we can't go without our insulin. We will die. Nobody should have to choose between their car payment or food and insulin. It's just unacceptable. So this is a major priority. I will be visiting the plant that Civic is building in it's called Petersburg, Virginia, near Richmond, in a couple of weeks. Super excited to see that. I was there when it was already most of the way along. So this is moving, and we continue to work with the insulin manufacturers to help drive that. 95% time in range. Can you imagine 95% time in range with no work? That's the thing. They're not doing anything. They're just living. So good. Somebody is asking about another immunotherapy, tamp down the immune response. Talking about allogenic stem cell derived or donor beta cell transplants. So that's a little bit inside baseball. Or if you're not an immunologist, a lot of people ask me about their kids' cord blood. Did they make a mistake by not storing it, or should they store it? Where are these cells coming from? These cells right now are coming from cell lines. So we have kind of two problems that we have to address. One is autoimmunity. They're islets. We know that the immune system in our body attacks the beta cells in the islets. But we also have what's called alloimmunity. So everybody, I think you probably know that if you get a donor organ, you have to get a match because your body rejects things that it deems as foreign. And that's called alloimmunity. So we're looking at how do we do this? And right now with the islet transplants in this protocol, the transplant, the immunotherapies are very similar to are almost the same as the immunotherapies that are used in what we would call solid organ transplants, like a kidney. The question, I think it was Juan asked, is could you do something better, smarter, use newer versions? Huge focus of ours. In our T1D fund, we have over 20 and maybe even more now companies working on novel immunotherapies to reduce or prevent the attack of the immune system on beta cells. So part of that will help us drive to preventing the disease, or certainly delaying the disease. What we're looking at is in that part of immunology, could some of these drugs be applicable for cell therapies, like TZIELD even? Or are there other approaches? We have an amazing center of excellence, we call it, with a partnership with UCSF and Stanford, where they're doing some really incredible immunological approaches that are coming out of kidney transplant to try to do shorter duration and less aggressive immunotherapies. So again, if you look at the crystal ball here, stem cell derived islets with immunosuppression, that's kind of the first stake in the ground. But what we're trying to rapidly go to is reduction in that immunosuppression. And we're gonna leave no stone unturned, Juan. It is a top priority. And I tend to think how this is going to play out will be kind of like the closed loop systems, or you can look at most technological advances. You know, I'm reading my Q&A here on my iPhone and on a laptop, and we didn't have this technology when I started at then JDRF. We had nothing, and then we went to Blackberries and these huge cell phones and all this stuff. Now we have these amazing computers that just sit in our pockets. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see that the first gen cell therapies and quick innovation to reduce and hopefully quickly eliminate the need for those immunosuppressants. So if you're giving and supporting Breakthrough T1D right now, this is a major area that we're using those dollars to support. And I would urge you to lean in. That's what my family is doing. This is a unbelievable time for the science. I see Ilana asking about Sana, another amazing cell therapy company. I saw their chief medical officer, Gary, Dr. Meininger, in Orlando. I mean, here's a chief medical officer who lives with type 1 and unfortunately has a child with T1D. And he is so committed to getting that therapy. So that's another shot on goal. And Alana, you ask about Cernova, another shot on goal. We're pushing. And if you have anybody who has other ideas, always send them our way. If you know companies, great researchers, we have a team of scientists who are amazing, and we're scouring the earth for the best people to keep pushing this. Mary Horn, thank you for putting the link to the Screen Act. Please get on our advocacy page. Please click on that link and help us advocate to have the government really pushing on screening as well. So I see Katrina. I'm going to just keep going through these questions as fast as I can about screening kids and markers. So if some of our families, you may have been part of TrialNet, know that TrialNet did screening pretty regularly and then reduced the number of screens when people were antibody positive as they moved past the highest risk ages, which was kind of in the toddler age frame. The reason they did that is the risk really dropped, but it wasn't zero, unfortunately, but it dropped. And a lot of what we wrestle with when we're doing this type of work is the cost benefit analysis. How much does it cost for what's the diminishing return on investment? So this is something that I would recommend, Katrina, you talk to your doctor. I'm happy to point you to one of the team members like Anastasia, Dr. Albanese O'Neill, who can talk you through what to do here. I'm sorry that your child has 2 antibodies, and it is in a high risk category now because, that's somebody, obviously your child, we're going to have to keep a very close eye on. One, dual hormone pumps. Beta Bionics was very present at the meeting. I was talking to one of our great scientists, Jonathan Rosen, at the meeting about dual hormone, whether it's glucagon or another hormone, amylin, that we believe could help reduce the need for mealtime bolus with maybe even a co-formulated insulin amylin approach. So it might not even need to be, this is dual hormone, need to be 2-chambered. It could maybe be in 1 chamber of the pump. And that is a huge area of focus. I know Beta Bionics is pushing forward on their dual glucagon insulin approach. I don't know that I can rattle off their timeframes based upon their clinical trial cadence. So you'll have to keep an eye on our website or look at where Beta Bionics, they probably are talking about that on their website. We are also funding, again, amylin co-formulation. So if you look at closed loop and where Breakthrough T1D is, I think we see 2 big things that we would love to see further improvement on. One is the reduction in the need for meal bolusing, and the other is the size and the compatibility. Obviously, the sensors are getting smaller. There are more pumps coming down the pike. There are more algorithms, and that's all great. If we could add another hormone cost effectively, that would be great. Let me see. Sorry, I'm reading questions here. I'm just trying to follow along. There's folks, TrialNet, leading place to get screened. Advocate, TrialNet. Sorry, I'm just trying to go here. Angie, New Zealand and other countries. So Breakthrough T1D, we're funding research in about 20 to 25 countries in any given year. I think it's a great strength of our organization as we're scouring the earth to find the best research. We have a team of amazing scientists in New York and Boston and Europe and in Australia, the UK, helping us search out this science. And then once we fund it, keep a close eye on it to see how it's progressing. I don't know that we're funding in New Zealand, and your kind of sister country in Australia. We're funding a ton. I know the team in JDRF Australia has been working really, really hard to make sure that the advances that we're seeing are reaching Australia and New Zealand as quick as they are anywhere in the world. It's a major, major priority of ours. I showed that picture of Chuck Henderson, Sydney Jovic, and me. Sydney's one of our most amazing employees. I've been a partner with her for over a decade, and she is taking the baton from our current CEO down in Australia, Mike Wilson, and you couldn't have a better champion fighting the fight, and she will be right next to you guys, and I know working closely to make sure New Zealand benefits from these advances. So I always think of this as a global fight, in that we have to globally advocate for the breakthroughs to be accessible. Accelerating life-changing breakthroughs. That's the mission. So there's the accelerating part. That's the R&D. Life-changing is the access. I don't think any of us care if this cell therapy gets approved and none of us can get it. Nobody cares. So whether it's New Zealand, New Jersey, Australia, Germany, you name it, we're going to be fighting. And we're going to be fighting for access and to make sure everybody with type 1 has access to these advancements as quickly as possible. It's a major priority of mine. Microbiome, Vicky, that's a great question. We've done a ton of work on the microbiome. I'll say, as a scientist, I find the microbiome stuff really hard. It's so complicated, but we have amazing science going on there. Did a lot of really interesting studies on risk, Finland versus Russia, all over the US, working with amazing places like the Broad Institute at MIT. So yes, unwinding autoimmunity, what's driving what you're calling gut dysbiosis, how to intervene is a big priority of ours. So yes, very much focused on that. Did Sana dose 1 to 2 trial participants with gene edited islets? I don't know that I can talk about where Sana is, but I'm not sure what's public right now. So I'm not going to say anything about where Sana is, other than I know that their plan is to move into humans in the very near future. And we're really excited about that and working with them. In fact, our T1D fund is investing in Sana. So really, really great stuff. Okay. Did I miss any questions? Oh, and we are funding work. My team is telling me at the University of Otago in New Zealand. So we are in New Zealand, not just in advocacy, but also in funding. Don's talking about TrialNet. TrialNet's been an amazing partner. We actually have funded some of the European parts of TrialNet to have a global TrialNet. Huge. If you advocate for the special diabetes program, again, I can't stress enough, you don't need to have money to support Breakthrough T1D. If you can't fundraise or you can't give, that's fine. Be an advocate, participate in trials, get other people involved. And this TrialNet program has been so critical, getting teplizumab approved. All the new immunotherapies that are coming down the pike, the bulk of them have come out of work that's come through TrialNet, our understanding of the natural history of type 1 diabetes. So Don, thank you for highlighting that TrialNet continues to invest. The special diabetes program, which is part of an appropriation that our Congress gives to T1D research, $3 billion to T1D research. If you wear an Omnipod, Medtronic, Tandem closed loop, well, Medtronic, I'm not sure if the pivotal trial was funded, but at least the Omnipod and Tandem, the pivotal trials for those pumps were funded by the SDP. It's amazing. So please, please, please be advocates. All right, sorry, I'm going to go. Let's see, what time is it? Oh, it's 6:59 Eastern. So I probably have just one more question if there is. Otherwise, guys, thank you. we're in a really great place at Breakthrough T1D right now. We have a lot of support, but we could always do more. And I hope that you see that what we're doing is we're fighting for all of you who live with this disease or have loved ones with this disease. It's a passion of mine. Obviously, it's a selfish pursuit for me, but I'm part of this tribe and this community, just like you. And it's more than about my brother Steve and me. It's about this entire community achieving the goal of walking away. Let's go work on a different problem. And let's do that as soon as possible. So I can't thank you enough for supporting us in any way that you have. Get involved if you haven't, and keep us posted. Follow us on social media, email me or ping me. We're all ears. We want to be responsive and we want to be successful. So thank you guys so much. And I look forward to doing this again soon. Thanks, everybody.